Welcome to Eliminating Caregiver Chaos, the podcast where we stop pretending caregiving is just about tasks and start dealing with the real weight you're carrying, the emotional one. I'm DJ Castilleja, and I help family caregivers stop drowning in guilt, resentment, and burnout by teaching them how to actually process their emotions instead of just pushing them down and hoping for the best. Now, before we dive in, I want you to know this podcast is designed specifically for you, the caregiver on the go. Whether you're driving to yet another doctor's appointment, folding laundry, prepping meals, or stealing a few minutes in your car before you walk back into the chaos, I've got you. You don't need to sit down with a notebook or be in the perfect headspace. Just listen. Let this sink in while you're doing what you need to do. Today, we're building on what we talked about last time and taking it to the next level. We're talking about how society gave you broken rules about emotions and how those rules are destroying caregivers right now. So let's dive in. All right. So last episode, we talked about emotional hand-me-downs, those patterns you inherited from your family about how to handle emotions. If your dad went silent when he was upset, you learned that silence equals strength. If your mom raised her voice when she was stressed, you picked up that pattern too. If your family never talked about feelings at all, you learned to just bottle everything up. These weren't intentionally taught to you. They were absorbed. You watched and learned, and now you're trying to navigate the emotional weight of caregiving with a broken toolkit you inherited from people who didn't have a good one either. But here's the thing. It wasn't just your mom or your dad who taught you how to handle emotions. Society piled on too. And that's what we're going to talk about today. This second part of this emotional baggage we carry. Think about the messages you heard growing up. And I want you to really think about this. Maybe you heard things like, stop crying. I'll give you something to cry about. That's the one that I always heard growing up. Big boys don't cry. Good girls don't get angry. Don't be so sensitive. You're too emotional. Toughen up. Get over it. Other people have it worse. Don't make a scene. Control yourself. Keep it to yourself. Nobody wants to hear your problems. Just smile and get on with it. Now, on the surface, these might sound like harmless phrases, just the things adults say to keep kids in line, right? To teach them discipline or resilience, to toughen them up. But beneath those words, a powerful message was forming. Your emotions are a problem. We were taught, sometimes directly, sometimes indirectly, that expressing feelings meant something was wrong with us. Sadness meant you were weak. Anger meant you were out of control. Fear meant you weren't brave enough. Even joy could get muted if it felt too much for the people around you. The goal was always the same. Keep your emotions quiet, neat, and invisible. And society didn't just encourage emotional suppression, it rewarded it. The strong person was the one who didn't cry at funerals. The mature person was the one who swallowed their anger. The good person was the one who stayed calm, pleasant, and agreeable no matter what storm was raging inside. The successful businessman was the ruthless dominator who showed no emotion. And we see that displayed on TV and movies all the time. So now you're an adult, you're a caregiver, and you're dealing with some of the most intense emotions a human being can experience. But you've been programmed since childhood to believe that those emotions make you weak or that there's something wrong with you, that expressing them makes you a problem, that the right thing to do is just to push them down and keep on walking. You inherited broken patterns from your family, and society reinforced those patterns with its own broken rules. And that's exactly what we do. We push them down. We keep going until we can't go on anymore. Now, I want to talk about the double standard here. Now, here's what really gets me frustrated about all of this when I'm speaking with caregivers or I'm talking to other people. Here's what really annoys me. We don't treat our physical health in this same way. Think about it. If you want to get stronger physically, what do? You go and hire a personal trainer. You join a gym. You work with a coach. If you get injured, what do? You go see a physical therapist, go to a doctor, you do rehab, and you get treatment. If you want to lose weight, you might work with a nutritionist. You might join a program. You might get accountability and support. And nobody questions it. Nobody says, oh, you need help getting stronger. What's wrong with you? Can't you just figure all this out on your own? No, it's celebrated. We admire people who invest in their physical health. We think it's smart and we think it's responsible. But when it comes to emotional health, oh, now the story completely changes. When you need help with your emotions, when you're struggling with sadness, anger, guilt, and grief, suddenly there's this stigma. Suddenly asking for help means you're weak or there's something wrong with you. It means you're broken. We call it therapy like it's something shameful, like it's only for people who can't handle life. And here's what's so messed up about this: caregiving is one of the most emotionally demanding and challenging roles a human being can take on. You're watching someone that is close to you, your loved one, decline. You're grieving losses while the person is still alive. You're managing fear, anger, guilt, sadness, and exhaustion, often all at the very same time. Your emotional load is massive. But when you start showing signs of that load, when you're snapping at people, crying in the bathroom, slamming cabinets, lying awake at night, feeling completely depleted, what does society tell you? Practice self care, take a bubble bath, go for a walk, just think positively. And listen, those things aren't bad in themselves. We teach that at Eliminating Caregiver Chaos, but they're treating the symptoms, not the root cause. It's like telling someone with a broken leg, just ice it and rest. Yeah, that might help a little, but what they really need is medical treatment. They need the break to be set properly so it can heal. Same thing with emotional health. You don't just need a bath, you need training. You need tools. You need frameworks for processing emotions. Remember, emotions are a skill and they can be learned. But society has convinced you that needing this kind of help is shameful. So here's what I want to do: I want to reframe this whole narrative because the way we talk about emotional support is completely backwards. Instead of calling it therapy like it's something you only do when you're broken, let's call it what it actually is. It's training. Think about it this way: if you want to run a marathon, you train. You don't just show up for the race on race day and hope for the best. You build endurance. You strengthen your muscles. You learn the proper technique and the proper form. If you want to play an instrument, I play French horn, you train. You practice scales. You work with a teacher. You build skills over time. If you want to get better at anything physical, you train. So, why wouldn't you train your emotional capacity? Caregiving demands emotional endurance. It demands the ability to sit with grief, process anger, manage guilt, and handle fear, often all at the same time. And you're supposed to just figure that out on your own with no training, with no guidance, with tools you inherited from people who never learned either. That's insane. Getting help with your emotions isn't weakness, it's preparation, it's building strength, it's training. Just like you would train your body for a physical challenge, we need to train our minds and heart for the emotional ones. And caregiving, like we said, caregiving is one of the biggest emotional challenges we'll ever face. So when someone says, "Are you in therapy?" or "Do you have a counselor?" or "Are you working with a coach?" that's not an insult. That's not a sign something is wrong with you. That's a sign you're taking your emotional health seriously, that you're investing in yourself, that you're building the capacity you need to do this incredibly hard thing as well. Now, I know what some of you are thinking, but DJ, I can't afford therapy. I don't have time for therapy. I don't even know where to start. And I get it. Access is a real issue, time is a real issue. But here's what I want you to hear: emotional training doesn't only happen in a therapist's office, it can happen through coaching, through courses, through community, through podcasts like this one where you're learning frameworks for understanding and processing your emotions. It can happen in support groups. The point isn't that there's only one right way to get help. The point is that you need help, and that needing is not shameful, it's smart. So, why does all of this matter specifically for caregivers? Because when you're drowning in guilt, when you're snapping at the people you love, when you're lying awake at night worrying about everything, you're not going to reach out for help if you've been taught that needing help means you're failing or that you're broken. You're going to keep pushing. You're going to keep suppressing. You're going to keep pretending you're fine until burnout completely takes you over. And here's the tragedy: burnout doesn't just hurt you, it affects the quality of care that we can give to our loved ones. When you're emotionally depleted and you don't have patience, you don't have compassion, you don't have the capacity to sit with your loved one's emotions because you can barely handle your own. But when you invest in your emotional health, when you train your emotional capacity, you become a better caregiver, not just for them, but for yourself as well. Society's broken rules about emotions are literally destroying caregivers. They're keeping you isolated. They're keeping you filled with shame and guilt. They're keeping you from getting the support you desperately need. And it's time to reject those rules. It's time to say, you know what? My emotions aren't a problem. They're a signal. And I'm going to learn how to work with them instead of fighting against them. So here's what I want you to take away from today. Last episode, we talked about how your family gave you emotional hand-me-downs that don't fit caregiving. Today, we added another layer of how society reinforces those broken patterns with its own toxic messages. Society taught you that emotions are a problem to be controlled, but that is a lie. Emotions are part of being human, and learning how to process them isn't weakness, it's training. If you're struggling as a caregiver, it's not because something is wrong with you. It's because you're doing something incredibly hard with tools that were never designed for this job. But you can learn new tools. You can build emotional capacity, and you can reject the shame that society has tried to put on you. If you want help with that, if you want coaching, frameworks, and a community that actually gets it, visit www.eliminatingcaregiverchaos.com. You don't have to do this alone, and you don't have to be ashamed of needing support. Thanks for listening to Eliminating Caregiver Chaos, and we'll see you next time.